afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another very interesting webinar that will focus on digital tools, productivity, and business continuity. Mankind's first biggest calamity, World War I, or the Great War as it is called, started with smoking barrels of guns fired in August during 1914. The year is 2020, and humankind, after surviving a bigger catastrophe that etched itself in history between 1939 and 1945, is now facing probably its steepest ever challenge for survival in the form of a zoonotic virus officially known as SARS-CoV-2, incarnating in humans in the form of COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic is considered as the most crucial global health calamity of the century and the greatest challenge that the humankind has faced since the Second World War. As the human race still searches for the depths that the pandemic could take them to, business across civilizations and countries are uncertain of their future due to the immediate threats from the resultant economic depression. At a time like this, business leaders from different civilizations can and should draw inspiration from each other and form a united front to beat this deadly disease. Businesses and industry sectors across nations do share common ground. That is exactly what has been demonstrated in the ongoing global public health crisis. All across the world, frontline doctors and nurses have been risking their own lives to save those of others. Though they speak different languages and have different skin colors, their shared respect for human lives is unmistakable. The doctors' respect for lives is coterminous with businesses' desire to survive and thrive. Today, as the coronavirus pandemic has already claimed more than 300,000 lives around the globe, the urgency to pool wisdom from different cultures and people, not only locally but globally, has become more imperative than ever before. Let me introduce and take this opportunity to introduce Adobe Digimasters. Much like Greek ecclesia from 621 BC, where young talented citizens were called on as a group to deal with tough challenges, Digimasters will serve leaders who are front runners in their own domain, helping others in the same field of profession to steer strategies towards growth. These trailblazers who have stood out during normal times and have expanded or helped expand their business empire can, with their superior intellect and economic prudence, steer the world away from economic depression or avoid it from sinking to disastrous levels. The platform, which will have many avatars, including keynote sessions, panel discussions, roundtables, and fireside chats, will focus on one key issue, that is necessity of a digital strategy, keeping in mind business continuity. The platform will also hold strategy discussions around the role of technology in beating the crisis in order to form a mosaic of its own that will focus on building a better future for tomorrow. With this, let me introduce today's speaker, Mr. Vishal Gondal, who started his entrepreneurial journey at the age of 60, founding India Games, and is known as the father of the Indian gaming industry. Having taken the company to amazing heights in 2012, India Games was acquired by Walt Disney Company, post which he served as the managing director digital of Disney UTV. He is also a notable angel investor. Vishal was listed among the top 50 executives in mobile content space by the UK-based mobile entertainment magazine, alongside noted people like Steve Jobs. He enjoys running marathons, ultras, trekking, and skydiving. His love for outdoors and pushing oneself physically dates to his growing years when he was a national level volleyball player. Vishal is a long-time TED star, gadget and gizmo freak, and a judge on 2 television shows, The Pitch and Bloomberg TV, and Your Wish Is My App on NDTV. His passion for technology, fitness, and gaming led him to his next venture, Goki, which is focused on helping people make a change towards a healthier lifestyle and be the force of good. And to moderate today's session, let me welcome Sriram Ananthasayam, who is a senior partner at PwC's India Government and Public Services practice. He has experience in working on and in delivering government and smart city and blockchain projects in countries such as India, UK, US, Canada, UAE, South Africa, and Australia. Sriram has been involved with smart cities since 2009, and his experience in government spans the following: government shared services, technology-aided government transformation, smart city, public safety, and many more others. Prior to joining PwC India, Sriram was leading smart city and blockchain initiatives for IBM Middle East and Africa, based out of Dubai. Before we start today's proceedings, let me once again welcome Vishal, who's going to help us or provide us with a presentation before Sriram and Vishal gets into a conversation, which is going to be insightful for our viewers and audience. Let me also take this opportunity to request all the audience to put their computers, mobiles, whichever device they're accessing through on mute and only ask questions once the session is over. Over to you, Vishal.
Hi, nice meeting you, Sriram, and welcome everybody. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening around the world. Of course, I'm sure you all are well aware of the challenges the world is facing due to COVID. But specifically, what we are seeing is some massive changes in the consumer behavior and the impact it's going to have on businesses, on healthcare, and overall industry. So my idea really was in today's session to walk you through what we are seeing on the impact of COVID in the world. Also, it's interesting to have this session hosted by Adobe because my last company, Adobe, was one of my early investors, and we've been hearing of this term Photoshop and Photoshopping yourself. And I think the future is going to be a lot like Photoshop because right now we are going to look at tools and building blocks of how future consumerization and future healthcare and future products and services are going to be built. It is going to be a very different world. At least in the short to medium term, we are going to see massive disruptions in a lot of businesses. And the idea really is to give you some sense of what these disruptions could lead. And especially, I would say one area which is going to have the biggest impact is the world of healthcare. And let me kind of quickly run through a few slides so that to set the context, and then we can make it more interactive, jump into a session with Sri Ram, and then possibly also open this to others for questions. So I hope you can see the screen out here. You can see the screen, I presume. So I think what has really happened is, and I like to coin the term or like to refer to this as the Internet of Health. We are in a very, very unprecedented situation where people are, you can see news reports of people talking about their heart rate and oxygen levels and temperature. And suddenly, the entire world is looking at parameters, health parameters on an ongoing basis, because these parameters are going to determine whether you are going to live or die. And the internet which we've been experiencing so far is what I call the internet of information. We had information like government records, Wikipedia, a lot of enterprises started digitizing their workflow, invoicing. So the internet which was built was largely around data. And then of course we had tools like Facebook and social media, which made it a lot about networking. But for the first time, the consumer is defining their health needs during the COVID crisis. And we can see things which were not digitized, especially in India, a lot of the healthcare interactions were scribbled on a piece of paper and, or they were just stuck in the same healthcare systems or in that same hospital. And we know India is also a country where 90% people were just prescribing themselves medicines. And, we are possibly one of the rare countries or few countries where you can just walk in and get a prescription drug from any store. So I think this whole culture of self-medication also was proving to be quite harmful. But now suddenly we are seeing that a lot of health information is getting digitized, and all this digitization is going to lead to this creating a new kind of internet, a new kind of internet where health data will be used for various things. And if you really look at what is happening, and we just, by the way, announced last month, like less than a month back, a wearable which I call is as good as having an ICU on your wrist, because we are now entering an era where between your phone and a wearable, all your vital information can be tracked, be it your heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, temperature, and all this information today, which was, the joke was that the average person possibly checks their blood pressure once a year. And now we have people taking their blood pressure who are on these devices 5 times a day. So the point really over here is that personal health data is going to become ubiquitous, and each one of us will have some kind of device or instrument to measure this, and this data will start going on to the cloud. And that creates a very, very new era of collaborative efforts for global health. Because once again, all these things were sitting in isolation. So whether it is qualitative data, whether it is quantitative data, so suddenly we are seeing a new set of data pool getting generated with wearables, with lifestyle data, with medical data, with diet and fitness data, with doctor notes. All of this were sitting on different universes before, but they are all now getting collated. And suddenly medical professionals, even insurance companies, doctors, data analysts will soon have the ability to mine this information. And this is going to lead to what I call personalized medicine, because the medicine system which we currently have is largely what I call not a healthcare system, but a sick care system, because it is more around waiting for people to get sick and then give them medicines to manage that condition. While that is been the healthcare of the past, but if you really move forward, we are going to look at a true healthcare system which is going to get focused on prevention. And that preventative mindset comes from an entire ecosystem where data is getting fed. And the best part is, what is personalized medicine? That is the key question. And the interesting thing is, what is personalized medicine? It is food. So what this is going to lead to is a prescription which is not about eating 5 pills or having 2 injections, but it is going to be a prescription on what changes you can do in your lifestyle and what can you do to improve your health. So I think that's the new framework. And just to kind of sum up my thoughts, what I'm really talking about is going back to the basics of good health. And in this game of good health, how do you level up your immunity? So if you look at the human body, our body has already designed to deal with all of this, right? We say immune system. And today, if you really look at the data from a mortality perspective, people who are succumbing to COVID are people with impaired immunity. And the question really is that how do you build immunity? What is the framework to do that? And the best part is that the framework actually is very, very simple. I don't want to give you all kinds of complicated things, but if you really look at the framework, it's only about 5 things which matter. The base of the framework is sleep, and sleep impacts everything. So, where people have anxiety, so everything around your overall well-being starts from sleep. And if you have impaired sleep, that is the first problem, followed by nutrition, which is about making sure that you're getting the right nutrition, not having too much junk. Then it comes to physical fitness. And the two most important steps, I would say, is cognition. I don't think so people are paying enough attention to feeding their brain. So whether it is having good fats or omega 3, and at the top of the pyramid, actually, if you look at it, it's happiness, which is centered around meditation and gratitude and, giving back to the society. And that is really the top, which is longevity. So if you look at the framework, we are talking about, already we know that the average lifespan in countries like Japan is over 80. Italy is again one of the places which has the highest amount of people centurions, which is, if you really see, a lot of people live longer, but they were living with impaired immunity. They were surviving because of medication, which was making them live longer, which is why the mortality rate was very high in those places, because they were living longer but with pure immunity. So the real immunity or real good quality of life is that if you can live longer but with better immunity. And this is the kind of framework. And the best part is that this immunity framework is completely valid to corporates. I think today we are all talking of companies with healthy bottom lines and healthy top lines and healthy margins. It's because just like how we have impaired immunity, there were companies with impaired business models and impaired workforces with all kinds of challenges. And what COVID has done is expose those very things. So people who are on this session can correlate the same example to their own companies or their own organizations, where I would say this is a good time to not only look at immunity for your own self, your own family, but even for your own organization and eventually to the society or a country, because countries with better systems, or who will potentially build better systems, are going to survive this. And I think that's really what we are talking about. And over to you, Sriram. Yeah, sorry.
No, and I think I just thought I'll make a quick point, because you're talking of life and longevity, and we are all sitting in this current world. I just want to quote from the famous author. We are quick to forget that just being alive is an extraordinary piece of good luck, a remote event, a chance occurrence of monstrous proportions, right? By Taleb on the Black Swan. And we are all living the COVID world currently, and very topical that you talk about healthcare. And then very interesting, you said that, it is like the health internet. Now, internet is where people have to go and seek, right? But many people are telling, in the post-COVID world, in the marketplace of one, you will have information coming to you from multiple sources based on what you subscribe to. And that is going to be a huge digital transformation. Early days, you went, searched, people were converging information in a portal, so when you open something, you get it. But in the new world, people say, all your choices, all your preferences, all your past data, as you said, the personal health data, everything, you will have interventions coming into you. Just exactly what are your thoughts on how this is going to transform the world, or the interactions between humans as we move ahead? Healthcare and non-healthcare as well.
So, like I said, I think the new normal is where people have realized that a lot of things which we thought were necessary are optional. Optional. We could not have thought of doing events like this on a virtual platform. We all used to assume that event like this could have only been organized in a 5-star hotel with all of us taking 3 days break from our office and traveling across the country. But today what we are seeing is that the same event is possible because our collective consciousness is made this possible, because we are all right now focused on this. So I think one of the big challenges which we have to deal with as humans is we are all used to transitioning physical space, to transition into different things. So when you get out of home, go to office, when you get into a mall, when you get into a conference, you get into that mode of that activity and event. Today, what has happened is that we are all sitting in our same, in our living rooms and bedrooms and wherever we are, doing online sessions from. And in that same place, I am supposed to be suddenly wishing somebody happy birthday, and suddenly doing an event or a conference, and suddenly doing a serious meeting. So what has happened is that we have to start learning the new normal. And similarly, when it comes to business, I'm sure a lot of people are questioning that, do you need the same amount of office space? Do we need to do so much travel we used to do? And similarly, what business models need to change? I think there is going to be a massive impact on all of this. And I think the answers are going to be revealing themselves. Nobody knows what is right or wrong. A lot of people say work from home is working good, but they are forgetting that it's because everybody is captive right now. But the minute lockdowns are opening up, uh, trying to do work from home where 50% people are in the office and 50% are not is going to be a very different environment.
I want to you on the same thought. You said people wear different avatars and are able to achieve and accomplish a lot more sitting from the confines of their four walls, or even enterprises are able to do that. Now, somewhere there's a lingering thought in my mind. A populous country like India, the percentage of population that is able to do this is limited. Maybe the people who are digitally privileged, so to speak. Now, how do you see this whole thing transitioning, and digital becoming more pervasive for better inclusiveness? For example, let's take the case of healthcare that you talked about, right? I have all my health information. I move from sickness into wellness. How do we move this to a larger Indian population, meaning cover everybody across the pyramid? How can we make it more inclusive? What are your thoughts around it?
So I think, first of all, it's a myth that people in the villages or lower strata of the society are not using the internet. I would urge all of you to try or at least see apps like TikTok, and you would realize that half of India, or possibly 90% of India, and this is, I'm talking of villages, I'm talking about smaller cities and towns, I'm talking about people from all stratas of the society are online. So already people have adopted technology, and platforms like Geo have democratized internet, mobile phones, smartphones to a large extent. And I think going forward, I don't see any reason why India will not have over 1 billion smartphones. I mean, if we have 1.3 billion people, there is no reason why we will not have 1 billion connected people in the world. So the question really is that it's not about whether they are accessing the internet or they are accessing the services or no, it's about whether you are making products and services relevant for them. And the interesting part is that the consumer expectation has become very, very high. Just think about it. An auto rickshaw in Varanasi is using iPhone. Using Facebook. He's using WhatsApp. He's using Uber, Ola. He's using platforms like TikTok, Twitter also now. So when they are trying to use your apps or your company's products and services, their benchmark is already so high. So no longer can you consider and say that my product is, just because you are poorer or you are not from a major city, you have a different product experience, is no longer possible, because they are already experiencing the most amazing products in the world.
A very interesting point that you say, right? Before the food delivery apps came into picture, before those digital tools came into picture, initially we thought food delivery would mean exotic food, right? Now people are sitting in the confines of their home and ordering chai, four cups of chai, and becoming much more convenient, and everything is converging to me as an individual on what my needs and wants are, stated, unstated. Now, in a post-COVID world, when we are kind of transitioning back, so-called, into a brick and mortar, away from the pure digital world that we have been living for the last couple of months, do you see that the past is going to continue in terms of more and more digital coming in because people have got used to it? Like you said, people are giving a 25% of the office spaces. Or do you see, given a country like India and the population and the, you see that slowly people will get back into their normal ways of functioning? What's your view, having looked at, you started gaming when gaming was, people didn't even think of it. So looking at a crystal ball, where do you see this going?
So clearly, I would say a vast majority are going to go back to their state of laziness. Let's put it that way, right? I think right now, while everybody is, very, very euphoric around all of these things, the reality is that there is, when things get normal or in the post-COVID world, for example, we saw the famous photograph of the crowds walking in Mumbai's Marine Drive, or the rush of people in buses and trains and wherever they are. And again, it is not that they want to do it. It's, everybody is trying to say that they are safe, or they are doing it because of necessity. Or in India, we have the attitude of Ram Bharose also, to some point, right? They are all trusting in God, not in data, as they say, while it should be the opposite. We should trust in data. So I think, to a large extent, because of that, I do see a lot of the old behaviors returning. But like I said, it's never about the majority, right? It's about the people, the 15, 20, 30% people who can adopt to this and make the advantage of this. And I think the best example I give is in the field of education. At one end, people are dying to get admission in Harvard and Stanford and MIT. And today, all these universities have made their courses free online. Why is not every Indian who is dying to go to these colleges and willing to pay exorbitant fees not doing it? So when the same things are available for free. So I think to some extent, there is a challenge around motivation. And that's really, so, in my opinion, there are certain segments. For example, the whole segment of learning or jobs, or, how do you better yourself, or healthcare, is less about information and data, but it's more around motivation. Everybody knows they shouldn't be smoking or drinking, but people still do that. It's not like they don't know that it is bad for you, excessive doing.
An aligned question, right? So in this current world, when you're looking, people are focusing on video conferencing, file sharing, chatbots, and a significant amount of productivity tools, right? Now, we also saw some of our political candidates doing a holographic transmission for presentations and etc. Where do you see this going, right? Currently we are talking of everything kind of a collaborative approach with some of these tools, right? Again, if I were to crystal gaze a bit, where do you see this whole notion of productivity, people engagement, beyond the current set of tools that we have, which are basic different versions of video conferencing or document sharing, if I may, or some kind of chat window? Beyond that, we kind of stuck in that era for the last 2 to 3, 5 years. Where do you see that going forward now that COVID is forcing certain behaviors into us?
So again, right, I mean, you gave the example of holographic images of politicians. The best example which I like to give for this is not even going to a politician. I want to talk about Ramayana and Mahabharata. And if everybody remembers, the best example of e-learning was actually Ekalavya, who decided to learn archery by putting a statue of Dronacharya. And mind you, after learning, he also had to pay the Guru Dakshana. We had to also pay the fee by cutting his thumb. So the question really is that the models of distant learning, all of these always existed, even in our ancient scriptures. It again goes back to, are people motivated enough to do this? The tools are always there and they will always get better. But the challenge was around motivation. And I think when it comes to the future, like I said, I think augmented reality, virtual reality are big businesses where billions have been invested by all corporates. So the question really is that today, while we are all doing this session, it doesn't sound that normal, right? Because we are all on video 2D screens. But I don't know how many of you know, but just last month, the biggest concert was organized with 6 million people attending this concert. And it was not on a physical location. It happened inside a game, Fortnite. So Scott Travis organized his online concert inside a virtual game. And my kids paid $10 each. And I had to also go and see what the hell is going on. So imagine, and we are much further down. So gaming, by the way, has always been on the forefront. The two industries where all breakthroughs happen, by the way, is gaming and porn. So we are not going to talk about porn here, but yeah, we can talk about gaming. So already the biggest concert happened. So what I'm basically saying is, eventually, instead of this 2D Zoom, this computer interface, there might be a virtual world where ET is going to organize this conference where we will all have our avatars inside and doing it. And we'll all be, absolutely normal about it, right? Because that's what the kids of today were enjoying, this concert inside a game. So already a game is bad enough for a lot of people here. And I would say if you really want to experience the future, the next concert I think is going to happen. I think both all these games are organizing concerts inside. You should do that. And maybe in one of these games, ET should organize an event like this also.
No, not since you talked about the Eklavya, let me also give you what I think. Sanjay talking about the war to Dhritarashtra was probably a mix of AR and holographic projection, for all you know. But coming back to this whole thing, you talked about all your personal information and data on cloud. You're sharing your information, right? Now, what does it mean for many of, right now, a lot of document management, everything is moving into cloud. People are no longer getting into license kind of mode, but they're looking at some kind of yearly subscription kind of models, etc. So where do you see that huge focus on and their affordability and inclusivity? Where do you see that market moving?
So let me give you an example. Seeing is believing, because a lot of things which we talk about sounds like science fiction. So let me show you my personal health dashboard, which is currently monitored by our AI. So if I just share the screen once again, and I'll just go to, so this is what is currently so we have our entire team on the platform. And if you look at my data over here right now, I hope you can see the screen. You will be seeing that here is my entire snapshot of the last 24 hours. That is my body temperature. It's been quite normal. You've been seeing spikes in my heart rate. So there has been, of course, I've been doing workouts and stuff. This is my sleep data. My sleep has been pretty consistent. I can also look at my resting heart rate. And as you can see, when I sleep, and currently my resting heart rate is not bad at 50, my optimal body temperature, my blood pressure, and it also goes down to real-time information. And all of this, so this is, by the way, just a sample dashboard for you to, so I can look at entire employee base. And we are, by the way, this is not a hospital. This is not a doctor. This is our HR is currently saying that this is how we are monitoring all our team members. And if there are any alerts, luckily there have been no alerts in the last 24 hours, but there can be alerts, there can be systems. And just the way we are tracking, courier services, or, a lot of companies track where their parcels are going. I think going forward, data of this form is going to do a lot of self-tracking, group tracking, organization level tracking.
That's very interesting. One thing that I want to ask are the same thing, right? You've been quite open in sharing your data in terms of showing that your sleep rate is 50 and many others may not. So where do you see adoption for some of these things when digital is going to become ubiquitous and every single aspect of your life is kind of available information somewhere? Where do you see privacy and consent playing a role? And is that going to be an enabler, or is it going to be kind of an hindrance to the whole thing? And what should industries, what should entrepreneurs, what should technocrats do? Think about these things when they're devising solutions.
So first of all, like I said, right, let's assume that data is going to become ubiquitous. So everybody is going to have their data. Now, the best use of this data is when it is collected and analyzed, especially in the context of healthcare. For example, the reason we are able to generate these alerts is because we are working with an AI company out of Germany called Thrive, who is looking at millions of these data points, and based on heart rate and all these things, it can say, hey, this pattern seems to be like somebody may be infected with COVID, or somebody is having depression, or somebody could have a heart disease. So much before the incident is happening, we are able to do intervention. So clearly there is a huge use case of this data, but the best part of the healthcare data is that it can be anonymized. For example, without my personal identifier, it just needs to know that I'm male, female, and some age group, a lot of this data can be analyzed. So clearly, the good news is that there are already a lot of data protection laws like HIPAA, GDPR. India is working on its own laws. So there is a lot of laws to prevent personal data for sure, which is identifiable data, because you could be discriminated because of this in one way. But at the same time, the same data used anonymized can have massive benefits, because this is what is going to lead to personalized medicine or early detection systems, because we are not waiting for people to get sick, but this data can be analyzed. On the
So
second
a follow-on question, sorry, just want to, so when information is captured at the edge, meaning, or you upload your health record into a portal, right? Are you suggesting that some of this data privacy security concerns have to be managed at the edge, or once it is, you give the document up and somebody manages at the cloud? How do you ensure, some of the privacy and sensitivity of sensitive personal information of what I choose to share? Maybe I choose to share my immunization record right from the doctor. How do we ensure these things? What's your view? What are the threats?
Like I said, right? So we are looking at a consumer-centric model. See, there are two models of anything. One is a provider-centric model, like your hospital or your doctor, or is the consumer model. Today, just like all of us are sharing millions of data points with Facebook, Google, Instagram, LinkedIn, we are controlling our privacy. We are deciding what do you do with the data, whether I want to allow friends, not allow friends, share my information. So what we are saying is a similar framework where the consumer decides what needs to be done with the data. So if it is going to be the provider's decision, it's always going to be challenging. So the provider-centric models are going to have a lot of challenges with privacy, which is why Goki personally and I personally talk about a consumer-centric model. For example, all the data you are seeing is done with consumer consent, because they have to share it. I can today decide to switch off my phone and stop tracking, and nothing is getting tracked. So the consumer decides what they want to get tracked, what data they want to share, what data they want to delete. And what we are also doing is, just to kind of add to this, we currently have 6 products in the insurance framework with the insurance company. So already now with 6 insurance companies, we have launched products which is saying that, hey, if you are healthier and your data can prove to us that you are lower risk, I can incentivize you by giving you a lower insurance premium, or eventually making your insurance premium zero. And I think that is what is going to lead to a very disruption in the healthcare model, because today what is happening is that the healthcare systems make money by giving you treatment, which makes them into a conflict. They are not incentivized to make you healthy. They are incentivized to, keep treating you, for example. So the pharma sector, the healthcare sector has this challenge. Once the model becomes where the incentive is to make you healthier, that's where the game changes. And insurance companies, governments across the world, and technology platforms are saying that if I have to think from the consumer perspective, how will the world look like? And I think that's where you are going to see massive disruptions and innovation in insurance business models and healthcare business models itself.
So one last question before I open up to the audience. With COVID and the whole call for vocal for local and everything else, and a lot of disruption already happening in the market in terms of technology and tech interventions, what is your advice to enterprises and entrepreneurs on how to address this vocal for local versus the business imperative?
So again, like I said, vocal to local is a very, very important initiative, because what happened was, I think, in this whole thing of globalization, what we did was we focused on certain things. Like, of course, India developed a very good software market, a very good back-end market, but there were certain segments like manufacturing, which were completely missed out. And it was not only missed out, I think for a lot of companies, it was almost saying that we are not going to even think about manufacturing in India. But now suddenly COVID has given people a real reason to look at manufacturing in India, and not just manufacturing, I think creating a local ecosystem. And I think that is really the bigger call of vocal to local, because I think creating of this local ecosystem is automatically going to generate a lot more jobs, is already going to create a lot more opportunities for everywhere else. Because I think if you look at the trade deficit we were having with China, or for that matter, every country in the world was having a massive trade deficit with China. If they can figure out a way to contain that, that itself makes your own economies and your own regions grow. And I think that's where people over here, for example, we all heard about how overnight a lot of companies started making PPEs, and how India already became the world's second largest producers of PPE, because the infrastructure was there. It just had to be reoriented. Similarly, I do feel that the mindset was always there. We have great entrepreneurs, but we were looking at creating different kinds of solutions. And I think now the call is well timed, and I definitely I'm going to see a lot of local initiatives coming up.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Vishal. I think covered a lot of points, right from personal health, moving from sickness to wellness. We did talk about the changing consumer behavior, moving into a lot of consumerism. How is going to change the way we are living. The new normal. I know your prediction that we are into in the last week. I see some hands, getting raised. We have, I think somebody, Mr. Bhavani from Pfizer. There's a question coming there.
Yeah. Hi, Sriram. I work for Pfizer, and I manage their finance shared services over here in India. Really my question was more in terms of as we move to the new normal and remote working from home, more from a security and a risk standpoint, how we kind of sensitize colleagues. Because I think one of the bigger challenges that I see in finance processes is that you tend to have information with regard to banking details and stuff like that. And while of course we've been able to, sensitize colleagues and make them more aware, but the fact that they are working remotely from home, and from a security standpoint, there's only so much that you can monitor in terms of remote working. What are some of the things that we need to keep in mind, more from a risk and a security perspective, outside just giving them information and making them aware of the kind of risks that are there? So I don't know if that's something that can be addressed with this. Yeah.
So I think the genesis of your question is, how do we ensure trust in the processes when in those days trust was confined to four walls of an office, and now trust is open and it's in the digital world? How do you ensure trust, right? So that's basically the premise of your question. Now with multiple systems, and I think this is not a new question. I think people have been talking of enterprises to employee. The moment people started accessing emails from home, from those days itself, this has been an open question, right? So, but the challenge is somewhere, there has to be a line that has to be drawn in terms of what probably can be, seen, consumed, but not be taken out or shared, right? What can be taken for decisions, and the decision again stays within that particular network. How do you take systems to make sure that this gets enabled? We talked about VPN and all those older technologies to ensure that the traffic is kind of secured, encrypted, things don't move on. So there have been multiple systems in place that currently does that. But having a tech entrepreneur, I'd ask Vishal, where do you see the future here? Meaning, what's next? Because I've been told that with quantum, people can snoop into even an OFC cable kind of information, and then do some, brute force attack and get the data out. So what do Where do you see this going, and what kind of security apparatus are needed?
So I would say security is as much a mindset issue, as much a issue of physical security. I mean, forget about your corporate accounts for a second. A lot of people are even sharing their OTPs and losing money from their bank accounts, personal bank accounts. I mean, forget about corporate accounts. In fact, corporate accounts, I would say, are a little more secure because you can set up limits on how much a person can use. So today the challenge is that people who are using all these UPI and payment wallets and apps like Paytm themselves are getting scammed out of so many people who are calling them. In fact, there was a series, I think on Netflix or Amazon Prime, which was also around this whole scam around getting people's OTP. So I think the challenge is that the security and apparatus, whatever you create, is as strong as the person's OTP or password which people can set up. So the way I personally look at security is educating a lot of people around it. I think just the way we train people on various aspects, I think here people need to get aware. In fact, one thing which I have told my team and I generally tell publicly is that do not type anything on any screen which you do not want to appear on a front page of a newspaper. Because you have to assume that everything you write on the internet is getting tracked or hacked by someone. People, for example, today I have seen that people who are all remotely working are typing too many things on WhatsApp and writing too many long emails and are putting so much stuff which is not necessary. So one guidance which I give even my kids, for example, I tell them that, guys, don't put anything on the internet or on your screen which you don't want anybody to see in the future, because nothing is private. Let's assume that even the platform it tells you is the most secure itself is lying if they are saying that.
So I have a corollary question to you. This came from one of the audience, Saurabh. Again, I'll connect back to the question, what you told earlier. So he's saying, you said that people have a paranoia to respond and talk about what they're doing. You're hyper-connected, we don't see face-to-face, we type out everything, etc. Right? But, on the health record that you showed, it's my steps, my heart rate, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes or so. And then, in olden days, people used to go visit a doctor when things broke, right? Otherwise, they were healthy. Now here, in the hands of probably somebody who is not medically aware, isn't all of this information leading into some kind of paranoia? Is it not fueling, it's not probably the health industry taking care of the sick, but you're creating a new industry, paranoid of health. So how do you address this?
I think this question I need to flip to you from PwC, right? You are looking at the accounts of people real time. You're doing audits on them. Is looking at all this information killing the CFO or the CEO of the company? No, it is making them more smarter in decision making for their businesses. So just the way we manage our businesses with data, real time dashboards, and if you see a particular business unit not doing well or having an issue, you go and fix it. The problem of health was that in health, we were not looking at any data and only going to the doctor when we are getting a heart attack. So it's like, imagine if only people came to you when they are filing for bankruptcy. If they came to an auditor, please check me, I don't have money in my accounts. So that is the problem of healthcare. People had no data, no information. They were all in the dark. And only when a sudden big event happened is when they suddenly got aware and took their blood test. So the problem is different. Just the way we manage our businesses, just the way we manage all other things with data, dashboards, information, insights, and experts like yourself or platforms like Adobe, which help us do this, we are saying the same way needs to go on data. And very frankly, I am not paranoid about this information because for me, it is making me make educated and guess about what I should be doing next. It's not about, I'm not saying this and saying, oh shit, what happened to my heart rate? That's not the idea.
So let me try to answer, since you gave the example of an audit industry as well. So the information is getting streamed, right? So there could be certain alerts which would go in should there be an anomaly that gets detected. And that's when intervention need to be taken. uh, right? So, I think very valid point. The next question is coming from the creative director of Infimax Infotech, Mr. Mihir Kale. So question is very interesting. He's saying in the digital world, everybody's online, right? Now, currently. And tons of personalized advertisements and personalized things coming in. And then most of them are made on do-it-yourself apps and everything. What in your view are even better future of advertising as it may evolve when people are going to be spending a lot of time in front of your telephone screen or a laptop or whatever, or tomorrow on an AR world, or tomorrow on a holographic world? What would be the creative words in which through advertisement will evolve? It's a very interesting question.
The advertising industry really needs to reimagine itself, because I think today's consumer actually is not responding to advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Today, the era has moved from advertising to influencing. I think it's no longer about, in fact, if you see an ad, you don't get influenced. You think there is something wrong, this ad is coming to me. I think what is more important today is how do you influence? And interestingly, the influence in the past was different. So we, for example, did a survey and asked people how many of them trust healthcare system. 98% people in India responded that they don't trust healthcare. But who do they trust? Number one name is Baba Ramdev. Number one name they trust in healthcare. Number two name was Akshay Kumar, which is of course why we got Akshay Kumar on board. And then they talked about all the chefs and other fitness icons. So the point really was that the success of Patanjali has come because of people's trust and influence Baba Ramdev has on people's health. So I think the advertising model is turning to influence model. And I think while there are many tools and there are many progressive ways ads and communication is being created, I think what you can really do today is test them with your consumer. So I think now with various tools which allow you to do A/B testing on, are people responding to green color better than blue color, or this message versus that message. So I think it's no longer about releasing an ad and then waiting for people to respond. I think now it's all about releasing a message and seeing how many people are you able to influence it. Because people are bombarded with SMS notifications, WhatsApp notifications. Your whole life is getting bombarded with notifications. In fact, I have kept all my notifications off. So in that era of, if you cannot notify me, how will you get my attention is what you need to think about.
I think very, very interesting point. Now that you talked about this, and since you cut ties with gaming as an industry upfront, right? And gaming is all about somewhere trying to unleash my creativity, somewhere trying to unleash my critical thinking beyond my normal ways of working. How are what are you doing to keep your business moving in creative ways using some of these technologies, be it gaming or through something like AI or AR or VR or whatever? What are the things that you're doing to make sure that while people are working remotely as well, they are productive and the physical digital gap is bridged? And as a CEO of an organization, not as a startup, what are your experiences and what are you doing?
See, I think right now, what people are missing is the human connect. I think technology is all great, but what people are missing is the human connect. So for example, at least in our case, every day at 10:30 in the morning, we have a call, which is a live call with our teams, which becomes extremely important. And in fact, now we used to previously have one call. Now we have 2 calls a day because people are missing the FaceTime, as we say, which we used to do a lot in the office. I think the second thing which has become extremely important in today, and like I said, this all happens leading from the front, is taking care of physical and mental well-being. So of course, Goki being a company which talks about health and fitness, we are doing that. But I think right now, most people are sitting at home and having junk food, which is not the right thing to do. So we don't want them to be in lockdown and impair their immunity. So whether it is doing meditation or whether it is having nutritious food or whether it is working out, I think that is becoming more important, and that culture of doing a group workout or doing a group meditation, or just opening up and doing a party, or just sending a jokes with your employees, is becoming very important. So there is a reason to have informal sessions also, not just formal sessions, because in an office environment you had a lot of informal time with everybody in your
A
office.
lot of water cooler conversations.
So that informal
Chai
time
pe
is
chai.
currently going off, and it
Yeah.
is important to get that informal time. And I think that's one thing, if you want to have a suggestion on what people should be doing, is get some informal
I think that's a very interesting point that you said. Maybe some kind of gamification of day-to-day activities could be something that people could look at, right? And of course, there are multiple aspects of businesses or transactions that could be gamified a bit. There could be some kind of healthy competition, leaderboard points, which will automatically accrue, and then you celebrate small victories. Multiple things that could be done to make sure that the informal connect, which was kind of the glue for the culture, gets maintained. That's a very interesting point, Vishal, that you bring in. And how do you bring in a level of informality in a completely digital world, and that too using some of the frontier technologies? Is a very interesting thing. And then again, I also heard somewhere that IBM is saying that they will no longer do facial recognition, right? Because they say kind of it can be used to identify certain people. So while we are moving somewhere into frontier technologies, there is also some kind of pushback for privacy and consent and security aspect as well. I'll wrap by asking one small question, but it's probably $1 million question for this panel. Last question: what would be top 3 advices for fellow CEOs on how to survive in turbulent times like these? Very short. I know you have to leave in 4 minutes. So if you can, that was a time check for you as well.
So I would say,
what the answer?
So right now it is about building immunity, immunity for your business, for your family, for your own self. So I think immunity building needs to be taken as a broader concept and applied across the board for yourself. And what is immunity? Immunity is how can you fight when you are attacked. When you're attacked by competition, when you're attacked by less cash flow, when you're attacked by anything which is not normal. And I think that is one overarching theme of how do you build immunity. The second thing is, how do you build mental strength? I think more than physical well-being at this point of time, COVID will have massive impact on people's mental well-being. People are not used to isolation. They are not used to be sitting in front of a screen, washing, doing dishes. And right now, everybody is in so much stress. And at the same time, a lot of people are going through salary cuts, job losses. You are surrounded with bad news today. The media is only giving you bad news. The television screen is giving you bad news. So there is so much negativity. And like I said, mental strength is going to be the most important. And I think as a CEO, or like as the captain of the ship, you need to lead this from front. And like I always tell, that you need to set by example. You cannot be sending an email to everybody and saying, hey, everybody work out and do this, and you are sitting yourself chugging cups of beer and doing nothing. So I think leading from the front is very important, and which is why I admire CEOs like Chandra of Tata, and how TCS has transformed is because of Chandra's own fitness and health journey. Or for example, what Anand Mahindra is doing. For example, when a lot of CEOs talk about social media and they don't even have functioning Twitter accounts, that gives a great example of how you can do customer service. Today, every customer is on Twitter. If there is something wrong, they will not call customer service. They will directly message and say you are bad and tag Amitabh Bachchan and Shah Rukh Khan and Prime Minister Modi. So you need to look at responding there. And again, like I said, you need to lead from the front. So I would say the 3 pieces of advice is that build immunity, focus on mental strength, and lead by example. For whatever you want your organization to do, you need to be the example number 1 for that.
Thank you, Vishal. I'll paraphrase what you said before closing this. Stay afloat to swim ashore. That's what you said. Second thing is, man is a social animal. And in times of, these kind of situations, look at how you can bring the informality or the non-formal connections, the camaraderie, the trust, the personal relationships, even in a digital world. Look for mechanisms and technologies, or maybe even gaming or some kind of remote mechanisms to bring this, be the binding force. And lastly, as you said, if the captain doesn't lead, probably the ship is going in a very different direction. Thank you so much, Vishal, for your time, and we close sharp on 5. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patient hearing, and have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sri and Vishal. Guys, if any question has been unanswered, we request you to email those questions to us so that we can get them answered later. Thank you once again for joining us at a webinar organized by ET and Adobe. Hope to come back with a lot more.
Thanks.